Okay, let's dive right into this. You know that feeling, right? Sitting around a table, totally holding your breath, just gingerly trying to pull a wooden block from this crazy, precarious stack. We've all felt that classic Jenga tension. But what if I told you that this seemingly simple tabletop game is actually hiding one of the most intense, literally computationally exhausting problems in all of computer science? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to totally demystify the massive mathematical hurdles a computer has to jump through just to simulate a stable stack of blocks.
So here's our quick roadmap for today. First up, we'll look at the complexity of Jenga. Then we'll cover basic physics simulation, followed by detecting block collisions. After that, we're solving resting contacts, and finally, tackling the stable stack problem. Let's get to it. Section 1, the complexity of Jenga. So take a look at a standard Jenga tower. It's got 52 blocks stacked up in 18 rows of 3. Now, we all know that universal, not-in-your-stomach anxiety of pulling a block out and just praying we don't topple the whole thing over. And looking at it, you might think, well, it's just a bunch of identical wooden rectangles. But actually, the reason the game physically works at all is something most of us never even notice. And checking out these measurements brilliantly illustrates why. If you actually take the time to measure real Jenga blocks, you'll find they are deliberately manufactured with these slight physical inconsistencies. You know, the mass, the width, the height, they all vary just a tiny bit from block to block. And as we're going to see in a bit, these microscopic imperfections, they are absolutely crucial for the gameplay to work. Seriously, without them, you literally wouldn't be able to play the game.
All right, moving on to Section 2. Basic physics simulation. Now, what's really interesting about simulating a whole tower is that, well, first we need to know how to move just a single block, right? Like, how does a computer actually know where a block is going to go? We use an advanced physics approach called Euler's method, which basically traces a block's path step by step. It goes like this. Step 1, we sum up all the external forces acting on our block to find the net force. Step 2, we divide that net force by the block's mass, and boom, we get its acceleration. And then step 3, we step forward using these tiny discrete little time steps to calculate its brand new velocity and position. We're essentially mathematically tracing its path through space.
But the absolutely crucial point here is how we actually perform that integration mathematically. And we do that using an ordinary differential equation, or an ODE for short. Now, don't let the jargon scare you. Simply put, an ODE is just the core numerical tool we use to figure out an unknown curve, say the future position of a falling block, by using a starting point and known derivatives, like its acceleration over time. Basically, it's the mathematical engine that seamlessly integrates acceleration into smooth movement.
Section 3, detecting block collisions.
Okay, so moving a block in empty space, that's not the hard part. The real challenge rears its head when these blocks actually hit each other. Get this, figuring out if and exactly when objects touch eats up over 90% of a physics simulator's CPU time. 90%! So how does a computer actually spot a crash? Well, looking at the left, we've got a discrete collision detection method called separating axes. It basically checks static frames, kind of like a flipbook, to see if separating lines can be drawn between objects. But discrete methods have a pretty massive flaw. A super fast-moving object might literally pass straight through another object in between the computer's visual frames. There's no collision at all. So over on the right, we have a continuous method called bisection. This method actually backs up and divides time into smaller and smaller fractions to find the exact precise millisecond of impact, absolutely guaranteeing those blocks don't magically phase through each other.
Which brings us to Section 4, solving resting contacts. Once the computer successfully figures out that the blocks have touched, we have to divide those contacts into 2 totally different categories. First up is colliding contact. You can think of this kind of like a violent car crash. It's an instantaneous impact, massive force, and the relative velocity changes in an instant. The computer handles this pretty easily with a sudden burst of simulated force called an impulse. But then we have the second category, resting contact. This is when objects are in continuous equilibrium, just quietly resting against each other with a relative velocity of 0. And here's the crazy part.
While a sudden, violent car crash is surprisingly easy to compute, simulating the quiet, continuous resting contact of dozens of stacked Jenga blocks is computationally exhausting.
And just to prove I'm not exaggerating the stakes here, check out this quote from Richard Wyckoff. He was a developer on the 1998 video game Trespasser. He flat out said, "The friction problem was the main reason we gave up on stacking puzzles. Multiple box stacks were nearly impossible to keep together." I mean, wow. Even professional game studios with massive budgets completely struggled with the absolute nightmare of simulating stacked boxes.
So let's bring the focus right back to our physical game to see exactly why this is so insanely hard. Remember those manufacturing inconsistencies we talked about earlier? Well, they create non-horizontal blocks and an incredibly uneven weight distribution throughout the whole tower. The heavier pressure points generate massive amounts of resting contact calculations for the computer to solve, while the tiny gaps create the loose blocks that you and I actively hunt for during our turn.
And this setup brilliantly illustrates how finding a loose Jenga block ties directly into the Coulomb model of static and dynamic friction. You see, the friction generated by a block is directly proportional to the normal force, basically the weight, that's being exerted onto it from above. So a loose block simply has less weight pressing down on it from the upper rows. And less weight means it has less static friction to overcome, which is exactly what allows you to slide it out without pulling the entire tower down.
Section 5, the stable stack problem.
So how on earth do we actually code a solution to this massive tangled web of resting contacts? Well, it turns out standard rigid body physics engines completely fail here. They literally crash under the heavy computational weight of dozens of resting contacts. If we try to use what's called a penalty method, which basically treats block intersections like super stiff springs pushing apart, the tower just suffers from all these stacking jitters and vibrates itself to pieces. No good. To guarantee the tower resolves all these collisions without crashing the whole system, the researcher actually had to devise a completely alternative, constraint-based hybrid method using a different kind of spring system just to stop the tower from shaking apart. And the beautiful, elegant result of all that intense math is this final 3D prototype in action. By utilizing that specialized spring-based method with those tiny, discrete time steps we talked about, the simulation successfully guarantees the stable resolution of all those massive mathematical constraints. Look at it! The blocks don't jitter, they don't noticeably deform, and they form a perfectly playable, stable stack. It's really incredible.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to take away today. The next time you sit down to play Jenga, will you just see a pile of wooden blocks, or will you see a massively complex web of resting contacts, microscopic imperfections, and static friction? You know, everything simple is wonderfully, beautifully complex if you just look closely enough. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.